The night was colder than usual, the kind that could slip beneath a person's coat and settle in their bones, but what truly froze Jonathan Hale in place wasn't the air, it was the sight of his employee walking alone down a dimly lit street, her shoulders trembling under the weight of 2 grocery bags. He had seen her leave work tired before, but never like this. Something was wrong, terribly wrong, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he couldn't look away. A powerful instinct, maybe guilt, maybe concern, maybe something softer he was too afraid to name, told him to follow her. And so the Millionaire CEO found himself trailing the young maid he had barely spoken to, feeling a heaviness in his chest he had never known. If only he had realized sooner, if only he had paid attention, maybe her suffering wouldn't have reached this point. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the beauty of seeing people for who they truly are, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It truly helps us bring more stories that matter. Jonathan had built empires from nothing, turning himself into the kind of man newspapers admired, disciplined, brilliant, emotionally untouchable. But somewhere along the line, the fortress he built around his success grew so tall he stopped noticing the people who worked beneath his windows every day. People like Clara. She was quiet, polite, always moving with a sort of practiced grace that made her seem almost invisible. He had seen her maybe a dozen times in 2 years and never once wondered what her life looked like after she hung up the uniform. But that morning, everything changed. Clara had fainted in the hallway while dusting frames. It was brief, just a moment, and when she came to, she apologized over and over, brushing it off with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She insisted she didn't need help. She insisted it was nothing. But Jonathan had seen the way her hands trembled. He had seen the way her blouse hung a little too loosely on her frame. And when the other staff whispered that she might lose her job if she kept causing disruptions, something inside him twisted sharply. The day went on, but his worry didn't. When she left early, carrying those cheap grocery bags instead of her usual tote, he made a decision so unlike himself it startled even him. He followed her. The city streets stretched endlessly, paved with amber light and distant sounds of nightlife. Clara walked quickly, head down, as if afraid to be noticed. Jonathan kept his distance, unsure what he was even expecting to find. Maybe she lived comfortably and he was worrying for nothing. Maybe she had family waiting. Maybe everything was fine. But then she turned into a narrow alley lined with cracked bricks and flickering lamps, the kind of place no one should have to walk alone at night. There was no apartment entrance. No lobby. No security lights. Only a back door to an old building with peeling paint and rust around the hinges. She checked over her shoulder. That moment nearly made Jonathan step forward, but she didn't see him. Then she slipped inside. He hesitated only a moment before approaching the door she had disappeared through. It wasn't locked. It led to a staircase that creaked under the slightest pressure. The walls smelled faintly of mold. And the light bulb overhead flickered weakly, humming like it was tired of trying. Clara's footsteps were faint but traceable, leading him down, not up. His heart sank. A basement. She lived in the basement. He followed until he reached a small corridor where several storage units had been converted, poorly, into makeshift rooms. Thin curtains replaced doors. The floor was cold concrete. A single bulb illuminated the walkway. Then he heard her. A soft sigh. A quiet, exhausted sob. He should have turned around, he knew that. He was invading her privacy. But something inside him broke open, and before he could stop himself, he pulled the curtain just 1 inch, just enough to see. Clara knelt beside a small mattress laid directly on the floor. A blanket worn thin was draped over someone, a child, no older than 6 or 7, cheeks flushed with fever. A small bowl of water sat beside them. Clara dipped a cloth inside, wrung it out gently, and pressed it to the child's forehead. Jonathan's breath caught painfully. She had a child. Sick. Burning with fever. And this cramped, freezing storage cellar, this was their home. Clara whispered apologies to the child in a trembling voice. She promised she would save enough money soon for proper medicine. She promised things would get better. She promised days full of sunshine and warm meals and a real bed. But her voice cracked, betraying both her hope and her despair. Jonathan leaned his forehead against the wall, a surge of shame washing over him so intensely he could hardly breathe. He paid some executives more in a day than Clara earned in a month. He spent more money on a single business lunch than she likely spent on groceries for a week. He had walked through his company believing he was a fair man, a good leader. Now he realized he wasn't even looking. He hadn't seen her struggle, her exhaustion, her hunger, her trembling collapse earlier that morning. He hadn't seen anything at all. He backed away, retreating silently, leaving the building with shaking hands. He didn't sleep that night. He didn't sleep at all the next night either. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the basement. The broken mattress. The fevered child. And Clara's face, tired, worn, but still full of love. The next morning, he arrived at the mansion earlier than usual. Clara hadn't come to work. The cleaning supervisor casually mentioned that Clara had texted saying her child was sick. She didn't expect to be paid for the missed day. That sentence alone was enough to crush him. By noon, Jonathan had done something else he had never done in his life. He cleared his schedule, canceled every meeting, and drove back to that basement. This time he knocked. The curtain lifted slowly. Clara's eyes widened in shock. She tried to hide the feverish child behind her, tried to straighten her hair, tried to seem unshaken. But she couldn't hide the truth. She was exhausted, terrified, and barely holding on. Jonathan didn't step inside. He simply handed her two things, a medical card that would cover immediate and long-term treatment for her child, and a letter offering her a new job with a salary 5 times higher, full health benefits, and safe housing on the mansion grounds for her and her child, effective immediately. Clara stared as if the world had suddenly shifted beneath her feet. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Instead, tears filled her eyes, falling in silent trails down her cheeks. Jonathan didn't explain how he knew. He didn't mention following her, didn't mention the crushing guilt, didn't mention how her quiet suffering had made him question everything he thought he knew about himself. He simply said one thing before he left. No one working for me should ever struggle alone. Over the following days, Clara moved into a small guest house on the property, warm, safe, with real beds and full meals. Her child received medical treatment immediately and began recovering steadily. The color returned to their cheeks. Their fever broke. Their laughter slowly returned. But what surprised Jonathan most wasn't how quickly their lives changed, it was how he changed with them. He found himself checking in, making sure Clara was comfortable, making sure her child had everything they needed. He found himself caring, deeply, genuinely, in a way he hadn't allowed himself to care for anyone in years. He discovered that compassion didn't make him weaker. It made him human again. The staff whispered, of course. Rumors spread. But Jonathan ignored them. Clara had become more than an employee. She was a reminder of something he had forgotten long ago, the importance of seeing people, of truly seeing them. Weeks passed, then months. Clara blossomed. She gained confidence, strength, hope. Her child grew healthier each day. The mansion felt different too, warmer, kinder, more alive. And Jonathan. He became a better man. The kind of man who walked the halls of his own company with open eyes, who raised salaries, improved working conditions, and implemented programs to ensure no employee ever fell through the cracks again. Sometimes Clara would catch him watching the garden where her child now played, and she would smile, a soft, grateful smile that held more meaning than words ever could. And Jonathan would smile back, feeling something warm in his chest, something he had once believed his life didn't have room for. But it wasn't love, at least not the romantic kind. It was something purer. It was redemption. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and make sure to subscribe for more stories that remind us what kindness can do.